Would you tell us your name?
Wanda Aulenback.
What do you think are the most important highlights on your resume?
Well, I'm the president of the Jules Verne Fantastical Society. We're both a steampunk organization and a Jules Verne Appreciation Society. We're a non-profit and we host many events. On top of that, I also run a tea company. I'm a tea sommelier. I run Sense and Sensibility, which is a historical tea company. In general, I am an adventurous, world traveler, and keen observer of the human existence.
What is your opinion of the Mother's Ruin gin?
Well, it's not tea in my teacup, as you can see. I love it.
What countries have you visited? Which is the most memorable?
Oh, I've been to a lot of countries. Morocco is probably one of my favorites as far as how much of it had an impression on my life. Also Ireland. I'm originally from the United States. I currently reside in Canada. Morocco was important in that it taught me a very different outlook on life, seeing so many people living in different ways, very different from the way I had grown up. In Ireland, it was really exciting to be able to experience European culture that was very different from my own as well. And France was beautiful and gorgeous, and everywhere you turned, there was nothing but beauty.
How competitive is one on a scale of 1 through 10?
I would have to say 10. Bring it.
What is the greatest adventure one has ever embarked upon?
The greatest adventure? I would have to say starting my own business was probably the greatest adventure. I mean, I've traveled all over, but starting your own business is something much harder to do than just going on a trip somewhere and seeing new things or learning something new. Starting your own business is scary, and on top of that, it requires a lot of time and effort, and it's important that you put yourself all into it. So I suppose in the end, starting my own tea business was the greatest adventure of my life, despite all of the crazy shenanigans I've done.
How punctual is one?
Well, I would say bang on.
Have you ever visited Mr. Fogg's establishments before?
Unfortunately, I have not had the privilege to do such a thing.
Have you ever read Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne?
Of course I have.
How interested in the Victorian era specifically are you, on a scale of 1 through, say 10?
I would turn it up to 11.
And what is the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to one?
It's hard to say. I'm actually not a person who embarrasses very easily, but at least I can think of a silly story that it might be embarrassing to some people to share. I have a friend named Gar, and when I was living in Ireland, I was visiting him, and he's kind of shy, and he's kind of not the person that you talk about delicate things with, like ladies' underpinings. Anyways, he was at his apartment, and I was visiting with a number of my friends, and we were having a cup of tea when I happened to notice some ladies' underthings just laying on the floor by our feet, which I thought was very hilarious considering he was such a subdued gentleman and not the kind of person who would be randomly having ladies' underthings sitting around the floor of his apartment. But I had to bring it up, and so we could all have a little bit of a giggle about it. Unfortunately, the more I looked at the underthings, the more that I began to recognize them and realized that they were mine. They must have come in, stuck on my jacket or stuck into the sleeve of my coat and fallen out on his apartment floor. So after making such a big fuss about the ladies' underthings being on his floor, having to then admit that they were actually mine, I suppose could have brought a little bit of a blush to my cheeks.
Thank you for your application.